Today presenting, we have Ms. Stephanie Kowal, Mr. Dan Ferruggio. A lot of expertise, big believers in the receiving functionality that MSCM offers. We know that a lot of organizations have deployed handhelds for part counting, but a lot less use them for receiving and delivery. So very excited to see what they have to say today. Please give a big round of applause to Ms. Stephanie Kowal and Mr. Dan Ferruggio.
Yay, welcome everyone. Excited to get RAD this afternoon. A little bit about us first. We are a professional services company focusing on Lawson. We were founded in 1999. We were out of Baltimore, but we also have an office here in Tampa. We are just over 60 consultants. We specialize in all different areas, not just supply chain, also financials, HR, tech. We're here to help.
Supply chain is the best.
Yes, supply chain is the best. We have cool glasses popping on our pictures. I mean, how awesome is that?
That is pretty awesome.
For today's agenda, we're going to be going through RAD functionality. So we have some nice screenshots here right on a handheld, and we're going to be walking through what that looks like. We're also going to be talking through some extra features that are available, how you can benefit, and then we're going to walk through a typical project approach. So first off, what is RAD, right? That's a funny little, what's that, an elephant? I don't even know. So it's a module within mobile supply chain management. It's basically just expands upon receiving functionality that you're using today in S3 and PO30. But now you're utilizing this handheld to make the process more efficient, right? It also allows you the ability to track the delivery of these packages, and not just for purchase orders that you have in the system, but also just miscellaneous products that come in. You can have a signature for those deliveries, and really it's maintaining all this record information, additional detail that's not just stored in PO30 today. So pretty cool. So here are some RAD functions. Here we have like a emulator of what you'd see on a handheld. So we're going to be going through today doc logging, PO receiving, miscellaneous receiving for those non-PO deliveries that come in, what delivery looks like, picking through the handheld, and also issuing.
Okay, so the first step in the receiving and delivery process is doc logging, and it is an optional step, but what it allows you to do is track every single carrier tracking number that comes across your receiving dock. So a lot of times the carrier pulls up and is in a hurry to just unload and get and leave. They hand you over that manifest, and you look at the count of packages that are on there, and if you have a discrepancy from what you've scanned versus what the carrier's manifest says, you could handle discrepancies right away on the spot. So this is kind of what it looks like on the actual handheld. So you select your receiving location and company, and then you're literally just scanning the tracking labels one by one as they come off. It builds a dynamic count up top, and it tracks the carrier, the carrier's name as well, whether it's UPS, USPS, FedEx, and other ones. So once you have all the packages scanned, you'll submit that doc log and hit done print. It'll print out a hard copy of the carrier tracking numbers and the count of packages. And these carrier tracking numbers are also trackable in the tracking section. So you could do a search on the carrier tracking number itself to see when it came across your loading dock or your receiving dock, and run some reports on that. So once it's submitted, you'll get a message that comes up and says it's submitted. All right.
All right, so PO receiving. So let's really get into it here. So as I was talking about earlier, this is really just another form of entry into PO30. So here you're utilizing the handheld instead. So here you're scanning that carrier tracker number, and then from here you're selecting continue.
Yep. And if you notice the asterisks on there, that's those are required fields, and all those fields are configurable in the mobile supply chain portal. So you could show what is displayed and what is required. So you can remove some of these fields as well, or make them required.
Yeah, it gives you a little bit more control over what's important to you. So from here, you're entering the quantity that's receiving, and it also lets you know the remaining quantity there, so that can be helpful at a glance. And then from there, line details will display.
So when you go in and you're receiving the PO by line, so once you enter that PO number, it brings up all the details. It brings you to the first screen over on the left-hand side, and if you tap into the description field, it brings up the long description of the item. You could go line by line by using the arrows on the bottom, the left and right arrows, or you could hit the list tab on the bottom here and view a list of all the item numbers. Something else that is beneficial is this manufacturer item drop-down menu. You can change that to show the manufacturer item number or the Lawson number, so you have some options there as well.
And it also has a vendor item, right? So if it's like a distributor, then you have the other selection there.
And this tracking field below, it kind of throws a lot of people off a little bit. So it's not a required field. You can add tracking numbers for each individual PO line. If you don't enter a line there, you're going to get a soft warning message that says X number of lines does not have a container tracking number. Do you wish to continue? And you just usually hit yes there to go ahead and push past that soft warning. So once you have all of your information entered for the receipt, you want to do an add, release, and print, and that will update your PO30 record. Just adding the receipt will create an unreleased PO30 receiver, and you won't be able to add another receiver to that via the handheld. If you try and receive it again, it should bring up the lines, but it won't actually add another receiver to that. So once you hit add, release, and print, you'll get a message saying it was successfully transmitted, and then you could view and verify on PO30 that the receipt actually went across. And so there's a little nuance there with the receipts being sent from the handheld to the portal itself or Mingle. Sometimes you might have to do a next and previous on that PO number to actually get the receiver to show up. It won't bring in the detail until you do like an next or previous. So if you see that, don't be alarmed. Just try and hit the next and previous button. Okay, another option besides the receiving by line, similar process, except if your organization allows to be able to receive all, there is that functionality on the handheld, and you could turn that on and off just as you would in the PO module. And it's an option in the mobile supply chain portal to allow for that as well. So you enter the company and the PO number. If you have a PO, if you're utilizing PO codes, you would enter that in as well. And then again, you're scanning the tracking label. When you set up carriers in mobile supply chain, you actually designate the label formats for the carrier tracking. So if you're receiving a package for UPS and you check off those options in mobile supply chain, it should automatically detect that the carrier is UPS or USPS and populate that drop-down menu for you. So to do the receive all, you would hit the list tab, and it will show you all of the items on that PO, and you would just hit the receive all button, and it will update your received quantity to match your order quantity. And you could also receive by exception. So if you've received, in this case, if you received 3 out of the 4 lines, you could do receive all and then tap on the item that you haven't actually received, and then it will bring you back to that detail screen where you could adjust the count from there. So you also have the ability to receive by exception. So this is just updating. You hit receive all, it updates your received quantities, and then you would go ahead and submit it.
Awesome. So miscellaneous receiving. This is one of my favorite features of RAD. mostly because your receiving staff is taking in a lot of products that they really have no control over, right? And you want to be able to track the work that they're doing and the value that that's providing. And miscellaneous receipts is great for that. So example is, someone orders flowers to be delivered and it's going to that that central loading dock, and from there they have to take that product and bring it up to the floor. So any kind of non-PO items, you utilize miscellaneous receiving option here. You put your company and the location that it's being received at. And then very similar, well, it is pretty much a similar process where you're scanning that carrier tracking, selecting a vendor if you have any detail there. It gives you the option to enter a PO number, so maybe you're using the vendor's so like their own manifest. They have their own number, so you can track it back to the paperwork that you received. So that can be really helpful. And then lastly here, it's giving you the option to build in some reason codes. So all of these are built within the MSCM application itself. It's not going after any of your S3 reason codes. And then it also gives you the ability to add some additional notes. And then from there, you send.
All right. So once you've done with your receiving, it's now time to go ahead and do some delivery. Okay, so once the packages have been scanned and they've been received in, you want to go to the delivery module, tap that button, and then you have several options for delivery. You could build your own manifest by scanning the loss and tracking numbers on those delivery documents that print out at receipt. So you would scan them one by one on the build tab here. Or if you use a route, it would pull in all available deliveries for the locations that are on that route. And you can also create your own manifest, which would be done in the MSCM portal, and then that would flow back down to the handheld to be able to deliver multiple locations with one actual signature scan or signature receipt. And to submit that delivery, it would work for multiple locations.
So basically, if you had 5 different orders, you roll that up into one. So when you're bringing it to the floor.
Right. So some organizations that have one physical location where they're delivering to, but the ship to or the deliver to on the purchase order might be 5 different departments or locations, but it's you're getting one signature capture for all of those locations. So that's one way you could accommodate that feature.
It's very helpful.
All right, so once you scan the carrier, in this example, we're using the builds option. So we scan some tracking numbers, and then once it has that carrier tracking number, the loss and tracking number, it knows which delivery location it's going to based on that input, or the ship to from the PO, or if it's miscellaneous, it knows from that when you at the time of receipt, you're telling what is the delivery location for that item. So that's where it pulls up on this screen. All right, so then once you check that off, then you hit deliver. And then it gives you a couple options. These are customizable to what you want to show or use. So there's the 3 buttons down below, CRA. C is for confirmed, and that is going to make you get a signature capture at the time of delivery. And you enter the employee's ID number if you make that required, or you could, if your employee ID badges have barcodes, you could potentially scan those barcodes on your ID badges to pull that information in. And you're always going to have to enter a package count as well. The R option stands for released. So that's if it's a low-cost item, it's a box of Band-Aids and it was a requisition that you're bringing up. You would leave it at a nursing station or somewhere that's unattended, you don't want to get that signature capture. It gives you the option to release it, so it shows that delivery has been completed, but it won't require you to get a signature. And the last one is attempted. This is the A option. And what that allows you to do is, if you're carrying a piece of surgical mesh or something that's a high dollar amount, and you don't want to leave that unattended, and you definitely want to get a signature capture for that, this just kind of shows that you attempted to deliver that item to its location, but no one was there to get that to sign for it, so you're going to try it again later. So it tracks that in the system, say, hey, I tried to, but no one was there. Then if you notice, there's that exclamation point in the status column, and that just indicates that there is notes on this delivery. All right, so do that. So once you confirm the delivery, you have this screen that comes up, and this is where you get the signature capture screen. So you can sign it in the bottom. You're always going to have to enter a package count, and then these options up top, employee ID, first name, last name, you could determine which one of those fields are required in order to process the delivery.
Yeah, so some organizations may choose not to have the signature in place once they have the badge scan. You can pull from there, right? Or have some sort of balance.
Yep, and you could always have it available, but just not make it required. All right, so this is going back to the notes too. So once we confirm that delivery, we see that there's now a C next to the status column in addition to that exclamation point for notes. So at the time of receipt, there were some notes entered for a damaged box. So if we see where it says the note information, it says add additional information here. That was just our note to show you to add additional information. But you would tap on that little area, and this little box would pop up to show you more information on why you have that note added onto this item. All right, so once you've gone through that process, you'll see that the circle is completely filled in, indicating that you've delivered all packages for this location. And you would go ahead and hit the send button in the top right, and it'll show you that the receipts were sent, and they would be available in tracking.
Awesome. So another really cool feature is this tracking functionality. So you've received these goods, you've went out and delivered them, but maybe you're a end user and you want to see what happened to that request, right? Either you were out of the office and you're just trying to get a handle on where your orders are. So within the MSCM portal, under receiving and delivery, there's a tracking option here. So once we select that, it will bring us to a search screen. So they give you a lot of different options, which is really, really helpful. If you're an end user and you're tracking your own order that you've placed yourself, you can type in that carrier tracking ID and see where it's at in the process. You also can utilize the loss and PO number if you know it. The loss and tracking number can be used, the receipt number can be used, and what I find most helpful is that you can search by vendor. So let's say you're in the OR and you're expecting a couple different striker orders, you can just search by that vendor, and then it will pull up your all of those deliveries.
There's also that advanced search at the bottom. So if you don't know any of the information off the top of your head, or it's buried on paperwork on your desk, you could hit that advanced search option, and a date range will open up down below. So you could select a date range for what you want to search for and just hit the search without entering any particular criteria, and it'll show you all events that took place within that range.
Great. So here, after you've entered your search criteria and selected search, your results will display here. It gives you a lot of just high-level information about the delivery detail, a little envelope if it's coming from a purchase order, right? And any kind of high-level reference number, the carrier tracking ID, if there was any vendor information. Looks like most of these are miscellaneous.
Yeah.
And then it will have a check mark next to it if it's actually been delivered to the location. And then from there, you can select View to find some more detail about that particular delivery. So here, just gives you much more information. So here, we did confirm that it was a miscellaneous receipt here. Shows us how many packages have been delivered, if there's any notes, and also shows us the delivery event detail. So here we can see that it was signed for, and who it was performed by, and from there you can drill in even further and go into that specific event detail. That's a cute dog. So here you see the larger signature there, and then the tracking information below it. Bonus.
All right, so some other functionality that's available is you can set default locations for your receiving and delivery personnel. That's done in the user setup screen. Or you go into, you set create new default assignments and go to the locations options, and it brings up the various functions that you could do within receiving and delivery, and you could define a default company and location for those users depending on where they typically receive if you have multiple locations where receiving is performed.
Another great thing to mention is just building all these employees in your recipient table, right? So it knows that employee number, who the first and last name is. So we find it's helpful, to build a interface that will automatically update this information from wherever you're storing it, whether it's in your HR setup, or from any kind of other system that you may have that's storing the employee number and the first and last name.
So yes, that would be kind of like a phase 2 part of an implementation. If you're scanning ID badges and you don't want to sit there and type out a user's first and last name on a small keyboard, there are things you could do to customize to have that information be pulled in from some HR tables. And then also there is a new Android platform that is currently available, and it's more of a touch screen, so it's a very similar type of handhelds, but you're able to have a touch screen, and it's a little bit of a slicker, cleaner look. So that is something to think about.
And another thing that we really wanted to mention is, there are some basic reports available through MSCM portal, but we're really big on really finding easier ways to get this information to who wants it, whether it's the requester or the receiving area. And like I was saying earlier, tracking the productivity of your staff and how much work they're actually doing. So all of this information is being stored in the MSCM tables as well. And although you can capture these, the PO receipt detail through PO30, you're not capturing those miscellaneous receipts. So here, Dan actually mastered some of the MSCM tables. They can be really complicated sometimes, but once you get them figured out, it's pretty awesome. So here, that report was replicated through Crystal Reports, and this can be posted out on your dashboard through LBI, and you can search through some of this information and do a little bit more analysis, not necessarily through the MSCM portal. All right, I love this slide here with the moving background. So how can you benefit from RAD? Really, it's there to to streamline the process. So if you're using PO30 today, it works, but how much better will it be to just have a handheld in front of you, do some of this scanning, get more of this information, in the system? Are you manually typing out this tracking number in PO30? Let's make this quicker for your staff. You really can reduce the amount of paper that you're using. There's still some level of utilizing labels and putting that on the package itself, so you can choose how far you want to take that. You're increasing accountability, so area says, oh, well, I never got that package. Well, now you have the signature in place, and whether it wasn't the requester that actually signed for it, was someone else that was taking those goods in, at least they have that information and they can go to that other employee and say, hey, where was that package put? So that can be really helpful. And some areas that we didn't quite touch on was part of the RAD functionality is allowing for picking through the handheld. So there you can minimize some errors because they actually have the order in front of them and can click around and not have that paper process in front of them, which can be really helpful. And also doing quick issues through the handheld as well. Really, since you have more of this information in your system, you can have better reports on it. So really just the ability to tap into some of those tables and build some BI reports.
Yep. Just to touch on the picking and the issues real quick. So the picking, it pretty much completes your shipping feedback for you. So it eliminates the need to go back to WH32.2 and close those shipments out. So it's all done from the handheld. And same thing with the issues. It's the same thing as creating an IC21 issue. It's just doing it from the handheld. And you can also do negative issues too for returns. And there's also ways for the picking to validate against that. So to minimize those errors, you could throw a flag to say you must scan the item's barcode before you enter the count. So that way you're picking the right item. And again, you could toggle that functionality on and off, but it's something to help reduce any kind of manual errors. Okay.
Awesome. So typical project approach, a lot of it is planning. Of course, just kickstarting the process to start getting things installed and start talking through configuration. We talked a little bit in our last webinar about configuring those printers, so making sure that you have strong IT involvement or work with RPI to help get all that set up for you. Can be a little bit frustrating sometimes. Verifying your wireless connectivity. Then working through your design. So what pieces of this functionality do you want to move forward with? There's those issues in picking as well. Do you want to move forward with those on phase 1? Do you need that interface from HR into the recipient table? What do you want to attack first? And find out what your requirements are. So what fields do you want to make sure that you get that information? Who are your users? What kind of reporting do you need? So making sure that you are planning ahead for all these different wants and needs.
And once you have all your design and requirements hammered out, that's when you go into the configuration part of the implementation. And that's relatively quick. It's not very labor intensive in terms of setting up the different configuration options. So it's good once you have those planned out, the configuration phase is pretty quick. And once you have everything configured, that's when you want to start testing and training. Depending on your culture at your organization, the train the trainer sometimes works really well, or sometimes there's the classroom style training. But I find that on the fly, grabbing people when they're available, and doing training in a real life scenario actually works pretty well, because everything you could back out of everything that you need to, and go back to your previous ways if you run into any issues. So there's really what am I looking for? low risk go live. There you go. And then so we have user acceptance testing. You want to run through some test scripts to make sure that all the functions that you're deploying are working properly. And then you move into go live. So right before go live, you want to have a readiness assessment, make sure everyone's comfortable, they know what to do if anything goes wrong, have a communication plan ready to make sure if something isn't working, they know who to contact, and make sure all of the other departments are aware that this is going on as well, so that they are a little lenient with your staff if things do go wrong, and make sure that they know that they are going to start getting signature captures or scanning badges, because sometimes that could be a little it can take people by surprise once they come around with the new handheld and they start scanning badges and taking things. People get a little protective for that.
Yeah, so explaining to them what the value is, and they'll be able to track information themselves to see where the orders are. It's a balance, so making sure that you focus on communication so that everyone's on board and understands what's coming is really important. Question time.
Yeah, we have a few questions here.
Excellent.
So we've been saving them here. What do you enter for company if you receive from multiple companies on the same dock?
There's a drop-down selection, right? So you're as part of your configuration, you're saying which areas are going to have this implemented. So then from there, you just drop down,
and if it's
right?
a PO receipt, that it will be tied back to the company for where that purchase order was entered for.
How do you do a 100-line PO timely? Can you do receive all?
Yes, you can do receive all on the handheld. Just when you get to that, you enter the PO information, there's a list tab at the bottom of that screen. So it toggles from the details to the list, and there on that list view, there is a receive all button where you could go in and receive all or receive by exception. So you could go scroll through the items and update any updated quantities that you need to.
Excuse me. Does mobile supply chain offer the option to receive by scanning the manufacturer's UPC code?
So, if I'm understanding that, it means that it would tie the actual item itself to the manufacturer. Is that?
I believe so, or even like the manufacturer's manifest or whatever to tie back to the PO.
Right. So that functionality is not currently available with mobile supply chain.
Anything's possible, I'm sure, to customize that, but hopefully some sort of enhancement down the road. I know that for par and cycle, you can build in the UPC barcode, and it will attach itself to your MMIS item if you have it built. Same with GTINs, but I don't believe it does that on the receipt.
No, on the receipt. No.
What models of handhelds are compatible with the RAD module?
Sorry, can you repeat
What
that?
model of handhelds are compatible with the RAD module? Basically anything that's compatible with MSCM, right?
Right. There are some compatibility matrix guides on the knowledge base, the Infor Extreme, but typically we see Motorola Symbol handhelds or the Honeywell Dolphins.
Yep.
How much of the functionality with RAD can be utilized with a barcode from the vendor, either a barcode, packing sleep, or product? So this is similar to the last question.
Yeah.
It's not currently, but hopefully an enhancement. With the limitations of the productivity report, what have your clients used to create metric analytical reports on things like signature compliance?
Great question. I personally have not seen anything. I think mostly because the MSCM tables are pretty intimidating for some of the areas that you're trying to report on, but we've just recently have tapped into some of that. I wish it to be part of our offering when we're implementing RAD at facilities. But yeah, I haven't seen anything. Have you?
Yeah, it depends on what kind of metrics specifically you're looking for. Like Stephanie said, custom reports can be created to get at any data that you're really interested in seeing.
So I think what they're looking for is show me the stuff that nobody signed for.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So you'd pull from that. Now we have that miscellaneous receipts, right? So we could do that by whether or not there's a
signature, or
yes.
if they use the released or attempted functions rather than the confirmed option.
How do you do the manifest functionality? Does that work for cross-docking between supply chain locations?
So
Sorry, these questions are a little bit over my head.
You can do transfers, right? So
You can do transfers.
if you have multiple, you have a central receiving area, and that delivers to multiple different hospitals, you can create that receipt and then transfer it to that location once you're there, and then they could deliver it,
Yeah,
right?
they could bring it home. Yeah.
Yes.
Can multiple tracking numbers be scanned for one PO or MSC receiving?
So
Multiple tracking numbers.
So you could scan at the line level for the items. You could add an additional tracking number for the line, but only one tracking number is required to move from where you enter the PO number on the receiving screen of the handheld to get to the details. So the one tracking number is required, and then you have the option of adding more tracking numbers at each line.
This one's a little bit off topic, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Difference between part count and cycle count, which is the presentation before this one
Stay
and the
tuned.
one upcoming, so we can get a plug here for our 3 o'clock. Cycle counting at 3 p.m., same presenters.
Yeah, so cycle counting it's focusing on your inventory
Right.
products, right? And it's not placing an order to the vendor like par counting would, but it's you're counting the inventory that you have and then putting in your quantity, and then it's going to adjust your stock on hand.
Exactly.
So stay tuned for our next presentation coming up in 20 minutes.
20 minutes. So plug for the earlier one, question related to the earlier one. It's all MSCM here, right? To use par counting, do I need to use RQ? Requisitions? No.
In order to use cycle counting?
Par count.
Par counting, yes. Because
You-
it's placing a requisition.
So that's what the MSCM output is creating in Lawson to replenish, is a requisition.
Yes.
So
Yep, I see basically the par count that you're doing on the handheld is actually processed through IC83, which
Yep.
can also be used for a downtime, and that creates a rec number, which can be viewed in RQ10. It's just the rec source is different. So another great thing to report on for any of your requisitions for your rec header, there's that rec source, and it will tell you if it's IC83, that means it came from a handheld or downtime process, whether it was entered directly in RQ10, RQC, RQ500 interface, so on and so forth.
Yeah, and you can see that information if you drill into the requisition itself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then I have one final question here. What are the names of the Android platforms in Play Store?
I don't know that. I'm sure if you search for
Infor.
MSCM or Infor in the App Store, there's some options that will come up. But it's not available on consumer devices. You actually have to have it's a Symbol or I think a Honeywell handheld device in order to deploy that functionality, because the scanning options won't work on consumer devices.
Cool. All right.
Maybe
Well,
a later enhancement or something.
Hopefully.
I want to thank Dan and Stephanie for an excellent presentation. I want to thank all of you for attending, taking your time. We appreciate it.